My name is Melissa Grant, 35, and I've spent the last decade building a career I was proud of. As an event planner in Dallas, I'd turned chaos into beauty for hundreds of people, especially my own family. I believed that if you gave your heart, family would always stand beside you. That illusion shattered on a rainy Thursday morning in March. I was at my office, sipping lukewarm coffee, finalizing vendor payments for my sister Kayla's engagement party, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from her, just one line that made my stomach drop. "Hey Mel, just a heads up, you're not on the guest list for the engagement party. It's a small VIP thing. No hard feelings." For a second, I thought it was a joke. I reread the message, expecting a laughing emoji or a quick, "just kidding." Nothing. My chest tightened as the words sank in. Not invited. To the very event I had designed, budgeted, and poured months of unpaid work into. Every detail flashed through my mind. The ivory table linens I'd chosen from a boutique in Austin, the jazz trio I'd booked, the caterer who owed me a favor. All those late nights perfecting her dream, and now I didn't fit with her VIP crowd? The irony was sharp enough to taste. I set my phone down and stared at the half-finished seating chart on my desk. Each name I'd carefully arranged suddenly looked meaningless. I felt like a stranger looking into my own life. There was a lump in my throat, the kind that comes when you want to scream but know it wouldn't change a thing. For a moment, I considered calling her, demanding to know why. But something inside me whispered, "Don't give her that power." So instead, I opened my laptop and quietly closed every file labeled Kayla's engagement. My hands trembled as I hit delete. The silence in the room was deafening. Outside, rain tapped against the window, slow and rhythmic like the sound of something ending. I pressed my palms against my temples, trying to make sense of it. I planned events for CEOs, mayors, and charity boards, but nothing had ever hurt like this, because this wasn't business, it was blood. Have you ever done everything for someone only to be treated like you're nothing? If you have, hit that subscribe button and drop your story in the comments. Let's make this a space where people who've been betrayed by family can finally be heard. Because trust me, what happened next will make you rethink what loyalty really means. I took a deep breath and grabbed my coat. If my own sister could erase me with a single text, then maybe it was time to stop showing up for people who never showed up for me. Still, as I stepped into the rain, I couldn't shake the question echoing in my head. What did I do that made me unworthy of my own family? That question followed me all the way home, lingering through the night like a ghost I couldn't silence. Little did I know, the text was just the beginning. The betrayal waiting ahead would cut deeper than I ever imagined. And eventually, it would force me to choose between keeping the peace and keeping my self-respect. So buckle up, because this story doesn't end with a broken heart. It ends with truth, fire, and a kind of freedom I never saw coming.
When I was a kid, my mom used to say, "Melissa's the glue that keeps this family together." And I believed her. Through every holiday meltdown, every late bill, every broken appliance, I was the one who fixed things. When Dad left, I picked up 2 jobs to help Mom with the mortgage. When Kayla failed her first semester of college, I was the one who paid her tuition so she could try again. Family wasn't just important to me, it was everything. So when Kayla got engaged, I treated it like our celebration. She was the little sister I'd once carried on my hip while my mom worked night shifts. Planning her engagement party felt like the least I could do. I used every connection I'd built in 10 years of event planning to make her dream night perfect. A rooftop venue in Fort Worth overlooking the skyline, a catering team from one of my most trusted chefs, floral arrangements that looked like they'd been painted by hand. Every decision, every invoice, every phone call, I handled it all. I even paid the deposits myself, knowing Kayla and her fiancé were saving for a house. At first, she sounded grateful. She'd call me late at night, gushing about how excited she was, telling me she didn't know how she could have done it without me. Those calls stopped 2 weeks before the text came. Looking back, I guess that was my warning sign. After I got her message, I thought, maybe Mom will understand. So I called her. I remember sitting at my kitchen counter, hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had already gone cold. When she picked up, her voice was calm, almost distracted. I told her about Kayla's text, how it felt like a slap in the face after everything I'd done. I waited for her to gasp, to say, "Oh, honey, that's awful." Instead, she sighed and said, "Melissa, you're overreacting. Don't ruin your sister's big day. Let her enjoy it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom," I said, "she uninvited me from the party I built." There was a pause, just long enough to hope she'd realize how cruel that sounded. But then she added, "By the way, your sister mentioned she's short on funds for catering. Can you send her $3,000 to help out?" For a moment, I couldn't even speak. I wanted to laugh, scream, cry, anything. But all that came out was, "You want me to pay for a party I'm not even invited to?" Her answer was soft but firm. "It's family, Melissa. You do what you can." And then she hung up. The silence after that call was heavier than any argument. I just sat there, staring at the steam fading from my tea, realizing that my mother didn't see me as a daughter, just a resource, a reliable problem solver who would keep giving no matter how deep it cut. That night, I scrolled through social media and saw Kayla's fiancé Brandon post a photo from their planning dinner. They were smiling under string lights with captions like, "Love, laughter, and the best team ever." At the table, I recognized faces from my vendor list, the same people I'd contacted, paid, and coordinated. I wasn't even tagged. No credit, no mention, just gone. I put my phone down and stared at the ceiling, trying not to cry. But it wasn't just sadness. It was confusion, heartbreak, and a kind of loneliness that felt physical. I kept asking myself the same question. What did I do wrong? Was I too serious, too controlling, not glamorous enough for her new VIP circle? The next morning, I woke up to another message. This time from my father. He never texted, so my stomach dropped before I even opened it. "Your mom told me about the situation. Let it go, Melissa. Kayla deserves her moment. And send the money. Family means sacrifice." Sacrifice. That word used to make me proud. Now, it just made me sick. Because what's the point of sacrificing for people who only take? I looked around my apartment, the space I'd built on my own, piece by piece, and realized something I'd never let myself think before. I could lose my entire family, and they might not even notice. They didn't love me for who I was. They loved me for what I could do. And that realization, it didn't just hurt. It hollowed me out. But it also planted a tiny, quiet seed of clarity that would change everything.
For days, I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, that I could just walk away, focus on work, let them have their picture-perfect party without me. But the anger started creeping in, slow at first, then all-consuming. It wasn't the kind of anger that explodes. It was the kind that simmers quietly until it changes the way you breathe. I kept replaying every moment in my head, every late night I spent fixing Kayla's budgets, every call I made to secure discounts, every personal favor I cashed in. I had built that entire event from scratch, and somehow I was the one who didn't fit. The betrayal didn't stop there. A few nights later, my cousin Lindsay posted an Instagram story from Kayla's bridal brunch. My mother was there. So was my father, laughing, clinking glasses. The caption read, "The Grant Girls, Unbreakable Bond." I stared at the screen, my name missing from that sentence, and felt something twist inside me. They weren't just ignoring me, they were rewriting me out of the family narrative. I picked up my phone, almost dialing Mom, but stopped. What would I even say? That I was hurt? She already knew. That I felt erased? She wouldn't care. Instead, I set the phone down and whispered to myself, "They're not unbreakable. I just stopped holding them together." But the real breaking point came when Dad showed up at my office unannounced. He walked in like he owned the place, still in his golf polo, his cologne filling the room before he even spoke. "Melissa, this nonsense with your sister has to end. Send the money today." I looked up from my desk, stunned. "Excuse me?" He sighed like I was a stubborn child. $3,000. It's what family does. Don't make this difficult." Something inside me snapped. "Difficult?" I said, my voice shaking. "You're asking me to pay for a party I'm not invited to, Dad. Do you hear how insane that sounds?" He crossed his arms. "Watch your tone. You're making this about yourself again." I laughed, but it came out broken. About myself? I've spent my whole life making everything about everyone else. When Mom couldn't pay the bills, I did. When Kayla dropped out, I covered tuition. When you lost your job, I moved back home to help. But sure, I'm the selfish one. He didn't even flinch. "Family means loyalty," he said flatly. "You don't turn your back when things get inconvenient." Then he left. No hug, no goodbye, just that word echoing after him. Loyalty. When the door closed, I realized what had finally changed. They weren't my family anymore, not in any way that mattered. They were users wearing the mask of family, and I'd been volunteering for the role of doormat my entire life. That night I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. Kayla's name was still on every vendor document. My work, my designs, my contracts, all tied to the event that had erased me. I scrolled through the photos I'd taken during planning, the floral sketches, the menu mock-ups, the mood board that perfectly captured her modern fairy tale theme. My chest tightened. I'd given her the best of me. That realization, how much I'd given without being seen, hurt worse than any argument could. It wasn't about the party anymore. It was about every time I'd said yes when I should have said no. Every time I'd mistaken obligation for love. And the more I thought about it, the more something darkly satisfying stirred inside me. If they wanted to treat me like I didn't matter, fine. Let's see how well they manage without the person who kept their world from falling apart. But beneath that anger was still a pulse of sadness. I didn't want revenge. I wanted fairness. I wanted one single moment where they looked me in the eye and admitted how cruel they'd been. I wanted them to say, "We were wrong." But that moment would never come, because people who use you never apologize. They just move on to the next person willing to clean up their mess. As I sat there under the dim glow of my desk lamp, staring at the empty inbox where my family's messages used to be, a thought surfaced, quiet, steady, terrifyingly clear. If I didn't change something now, they would keep taking until there was nothing left of me to take. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't angry at them anymore. I was angry at myself for letting it happen.
Anger kept me upright for a while, like caffeine after a sleepless night. But when it faded, all that was left was the crash. The day after Dad stormed out of my office, I woke up to a silence so thick it felt like a weight on my chest. No buzzing phone, no messages. Just the faint hum of the fridge and the realization that no one in my family cared enough to check on me. For years, my phone had been a lifeline. Calls from Mom asking for help, texts from Kayla needing advice. Now, it was blank. And somehow, that blank screen hurt more than the cruel words ever did. I sat at my kitchen table, still in my pajamas, staring at the half-finished bouquet I'd picked up for Kayla's party before everything went to hell. The flowers had wilted overnight, their edges curling inwards like they were retreating from the world. I couldn't bring myself to throw them away. They felt like a metaphor for me, something once bright and useful, now just fading. That afternoon, I tried to distract myself with work. Emails, spreadsheets, vendor calls. But every time I typed a sentence, my eyes drifted to the corner of my desk where a framed photo sat. Me and Kayla at her college graduation. My arm around her shoulders, both of us smiling like the world couldn't touch us. I remember that day so clearly. I had spent my last paycheck on the camera that took that photo. Now, looking at it, I felt like I was staring at strangers. The guilt came next. The quiet, poisonous kind. Maybe I was too controlling. Maybe I'd made her feel small without realizing it. I replayed every conversation, searching for the moment I might have pushed her away. It's funny how quickly victims turn the knife on themselves. By nightfall, the apartment felt smaller, the walls closer. I poured a glass of wine, but couldn't drink it. I turned on the TV, but every show felt too loud. So I just sat in the dark, wrapped in a blanket that didn't seem to warm me anymore. The next morning, I opened Instagram again. An act of masochism, really. Kayla's engagement party had its own hashtag now. Photos of her trying on dresses, floral samples, cake tastings, hundreds of comments cheering her on. And in one photo, taken at our family home, I saw my mother standing next to her, beaming. Behind them, on the mantel, was a framed photo of our family, except my face had been turned around. Someone literally flipped it backward. I stared at that picture until my vision blurred. It was like I died and nobody had bothered to tell me. That night, I walked out onto my balcony. Dallas glittered below me, alive and indifferent. I watched the lights stretch across the city like veins, thinking how easy it would be to disappear into that glow, to become one of those nameless dots no one looked at twice. For the first time in my life, I felt completely invisible. When my neighbor's golden retriever barked somewhere in the distance, it startled me back to myself. I realized I was gripping the railing so hard my knuckles had turned white. I took a breath, then another, forcing the air back into my lungs. I wasn't okay, but beneath the ache, something tiny flickered, like the faintest pulse under cold skin. I didn't know it yet, but that flicker was the start of a choice. The choice to stop waiting for them to care. The choice to let go. That night, I whispered it out loud to the empty room, my voice cracking but steady enough to mean it. I can't keep saving people who won't even see me drowning. Then I turned off my phone, closed my eyes, and let the silence swallow everything. For the first time, the silence felt honest.
The morning after that long, hollow night, I woke up feeling empty but lighter somehow, like a glass that had finally stopped trying to overflow. For the first time in weeks, I didn't reach for my phone. No doom scrolling, no searching for their faces. Just quiet. I brewed coffee, opened my balcony doors, and let the Texas sun warm my skin. The light felt foreign, like something I hadn't earned in a long time. I didn't know it then, but that was the start of me coming back to life. Later that day, I got a call from Ethan Morales, a friend from college I hadn't spoken to in months.
He was the kind of person who could read between pauses. "Hey," he said gently, "I heard about the situation with your sister. You holding up?" I wanted to lie, to say I was fine, but the truth slipped out anyway. I feel like I just got evicted from my own life. He didn't laugh, didn't tell me to move on. He just listened. When I finished, he said something that landed like a spark in the dark. "Melissa, you've been their safety net for years. Maybe it's time to see what happens when you stop catching them." Those words replayed in my head all night. What happens when I stop catching them? The next morning, I opened my laptop, the same one that held every contract for Kayla's party. My cursor hovered over a dozen tabs labeled venue, catering, floral design. I thought about how much power I still had, every vendor, every deposit, every single detail tied to my name. For years, I'd been the one to fix things, to smooth things over, to save everyone from the consequences of their own chaos. But what if I didn't? So I started typing. One email, then another. Effective immediately, Kayla Grant will handle all coordination for her engagement event. Please direct all communication and invoices to her. I reread the sentence 3 times. It wasn't angry, it wasn't petty, it was professional, final. And when I hit send, something inside me settled. Within the hour, replies started coming in. Vendors confirming the change, asking for her contact info. Each email felt like a door clicking shut, quiet, clean, satisfying. Then I did something impulsive. I booked a flight to Sedona, Arizona. I'd seen photos of the red rocks and endless skies, always telling myself I'd go there someday. Someday had just arrived. I packed light, a few sweaters, a notebook, and the courage I'd spent years burying. When the plane lifted off that Friday morning, Dallas shrinking beneath me, I felt something I hadn't in years: freedom. Sedona was breathtaking. The air smelled of rain and sagebrush, and the sunsets painted the desert in colors I didn't know existed. For the first few days, I barely spoke to anyone. I hiked, I wrote, I let the silence rebuild me. One afternoon, sitting on a rock overlooking the valley, I finally let the truth hit me head on. My family didn't just exclude me. They'd trained me to believe my worth was conditional, that I had to earn love through service, through sacrifice, through silence. But I didn't need to audition for belonging anymore. Belonging wasn't something you begged for. It was something you built inside yourself. That night, I wrote a single line in my notebook. I am not their support system. I am my own foundation. I stared at it until tears blurred the ink. Not tears of sadness, tears of release. Over the next few days, I started imagining what my life might look like without the constant weight of their expectations. Maybe I'd rebuild my business on my terms. Maybe I'd start that podcast I'd always dreamed about, sharing stories like mine so others could see they weren't alone. Maybe I'd just breathe for once. When the plane descended over Dallas, I looked out the window at the city lights and whispered a quiet promise to myself. No more begging for a seat at a table I helped build. And for the first time in my life, that promise didn't feel like defiance. It felt like freedom.
The night before Kayla's engagement party, I was sitting on the porch of my rental cabin in Sedona, watching the sky turn gold and violet over the red cliffs. The desert was silent except for the wind brushing through the cactus leaves, a kind of silence that healed instead of hurt. I just finished journaling when my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was spam, but then I saw the name, Mom. I hesitated, then opened the message. "Melissa, please call me. Something's wrong with the venue." I stared at the screen for a moment, then turned it face down on the table. A minute later, it buzzed again. Dad, this time. "They're asking for you. No one can find the contracts. We need you to fix this." I exhaled slowly, a strange calm washing over me. For years, their panic had been my cue to step in and make things right. But now, sitting under the endless Arizona sky, I realized I didn't owe them that anymore. Another message popped up, this time from my cousin Lindsay. "Hey, not sure what's going on, but your sister's losing it. Caterer says payment didn't clear and the decorations are late. Are you okay?" I let the phone buzz until it went silent. Then I leaned back, looked at the stars, and whispered to myself, "They'll figure it out." The next morning, while they were scrambling in Dallas, I was sipping coffee by a quiet creek, letting the sound of running water drown out the chaos hundreds of miles away. But by evening, my phone lit up again. Missed calls, frantic texts, voicemails stacking up one after another. "The sound system isn't working. Half the guests are leaving. Tayla's crying. Please, Melissa, answer your phone." I didn't. Instead, I went night hiking through Cathedral Rock, my flashlight catching the edges of red stone. Every step felt like shedding another layer of guilt. They'd taken so much from me. Time, money, energy, love. Now, for once, I was taking something back. Peace. When I returned to my cabin, I checked my voicemail out of curiosity. The last message was from Dad, his voice breaking in a way I'd never heard before. "Melissa, it's bad. The food's spoiled, the floors didn't show up, and Kayla's yelling at everyone. Please call us." I deleted it without listening to the end. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of notifications. Kayla's fiancé, Brandon, had posted and deleted several cryptic Instagram stories. Shots of an empty dance floor, a toppled floral arch, and one photo captioned, "Some people can't let others be happy." That one stung, not because it was true, but because it was exactly what my family would believe. A few hours later, Ethan called. "Don't freak out," he said carefully, "but Kayla's blaming you online. She's saying you sabotaged the party out of jealousy." I laughed. Sharp. Hollow. "Of course she is. It's easier than admitting she screwed it up." "Do you want me to draft a response?" he asked. I paused, then shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "No, I'll handle this my way." That night, I sat at my laptop again, same as the night Ed sent those vendor emails. But this time, my hands weren't shaking. I opened my website, Grant and Bloom Events, and started writing a blog post. The title was "The Truth About the Grant Engagement Party." It wasn't angry, it wasn't dramatic, it was simply the truth. I laid out the timeline, how I'd been hired by my sister, how I'd spent weeks planning everything, how I was uninvited by text. I attached screenshots of contracts, proof of deposits, the email transferring responsibilities to Kayla. I included the line that cut the deepest. "Hey Mel, just a heads up, you're not on the guest list." Then at the end, I wrote this. "I didn't ruin anyone's night. I simply stepped away. Sometimes peace looks like silence, and sometimes silence tells the loudest truth." I hit publish. Within hours, the post exploded. Vendors commented in support, confirming every word. Clients I'd worked with reposted it, praising my professionalism. Strangers flooded my inbox with messages like, "Thank you for standing up for yourself," and "I've been through the same thing."
By morning, the tide had turned. Kayla's narrative crumbled as fast as her engagement party had. Screenshots of her messages leaked through mutual friends. The truth spread faster than her lies ever could. 3 days later, a local Dallas wedding magazine ran an article titled, "When Family Drama Meets Event Planning: The Story Behind the Viral Blog Post." The piece painted me not as a villain, but as a survivor of family betrayal. Meanwhile, Kayla's world was unraveling. Brandon's company pulled back from their joint business venture. Vendors blacklisted her after unpaid bills surfaced. And her once perfect image, the one she built on curated posts and fake smiles, started to crack. Mom called a week later, her voice trembling. "Melissa, honey, we didn't know it was this bad. Your father and we're sorry. We just wanted to keep the peace." For a moment, I wanted to believe her. But then I remembered how keeping the peace had always meant silencing me. So I said quietly, but firmly, "Mom, you kept your peace. I just finally found mine." After that, I blocked their numbers. No drama, no speech, just a clean ending. That evening, I sat in my office, my business phone buzzing nonstop with new inquiries, collaborations, and messages of support, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Vindication. Not the fiery kind that demands revenge, but the calm kind that comes when the truth finally stands on its own 2 feet. Justice didn't need my help. It just needed my silence. And that, I realized, was the sweetest sound in the world.
A year later, the world looked different, quieter, softer, realer. I'd moved into a small house on the edge of Dallas, with a porch swing and a garden I actually had time to tend. The air smelled like lavender and possibility. My business, Grant and Bloom Events, had taken off in ways I never imagined. The viral post that once felt like a scar had turned into my signature, a story that clients brought up when they said, "We trust you because you stand for something." I'd gone from begging for validation to building it with my own hands. Sometimes I still caught myself wondering about my family. I hadn't heard from them in months. Mom sent one letter that I never opened. Dad's number stayed blocked. Kayla had moved to another city after her engagement collapsed. The silence between us had become a kind of boundary, a line that protected more than it hurt. One Sunday morning, I ran into her by accident. I was at a farmer's market, picking up flowers for a client, when I saw her across the aisle. She was thinner, quieter, her once glamorous style replaced by something plain and practical. For a moment, our eyes met. No words, no smiles, just a flicker of recognition between 2 people who had once shared everything. I thought I'd feel anger or satisfaction, but what I felt instead was peace. She looked like someone carrying her own lessons now, and that was enough for me. That evening, I met Ethan for dinner at a little Italian restaurant downtown. He'd been there for every high and low, always calm, always steady. We talked about life, work, the new projects coming in. At one point, he looked at me and said, "You know, you never did anything wrong. You just finally stopped bleeding for people who liked the color red." I smiled because he was right. Forgiveness wasn't about pretending it didn't happen. It was about refusing to let it define me. I didn't forgive them for their sake. I forgave them so I could finally sleep at night without hearing their voices in my head. Sometimes, when I walk through the city lights on my way home, I think about the woman I used to be, the one who bent until she broke just to keep the peace. If I could tell her anything, I'd sing this: "You don't owe anyone your silence, and walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom." As for me now, I don't crave revenge or apology. What I crave is honesty, even when it's quiet. I've learned that sometimes justice doesn't look like payback. It looks like peace. And peace, once you've earned it, feels like coming home to yourself after a long, long exile. So to anyone out there listening, maybe sitting in your car right now or lying awake wondering why the people you love hurt you the most, listen to me. You are not crazy for wanting more. You are not selfish for protecting your heart. And you are not unlovable just because they couldn't see your worth. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, I hope my story gives you courage. Because sometimes the only way to win is to walk away. Drop a comment below. Tell me what you learned from your own experience. And if you're still healing, hit that subscribe button because there's more to come. Stories of strength, recovery, and finding yourself again. Thank you for listening to mine.